kushinda.
No, if you're selling mrenda, put the value in that mrenda.
Yeah, that's true.
Present it like a person who's presenting pizza.
Exactly. Okay. Continue watching Unchained Theories. Here we are highlighting the theories that make our lives matter, and our day-to-day lives are always run on this theory. So make sure that you subscribe and we keep learning. There is more to come.
Thank you. Welcome once again to this session of Unchained Theory, where we discuss theories.
Yes.
And for those who are joining us for the first time, theories are basically statements that attempt to describe a phenomena. And theories are very important in life because they help to understand different behaviors in life. So in today's session, we'll be handling the conservation of resources theory, and Don will actually be the driver, while I'll be giving directions here and there on the way forward. So I don't know. Actually, I'm welcoming the co-host. So karibu sana Don.
Asante sana daktari. Yeah, as you've heard, welcome to Unchained Theories, and today we are going to talk about the conservation of resources theory, or COR theory. And as the name suggests, we have conservation of resources. We all aspire or desire to have resources, and how do we manage these resources? So that is where the baseline is, and Daktari is going to expound more on what is the definition of the conservation of resources theory. And so Daktari, back to you. What do you think is the conservation of resources theory?
Yeah, so basically this is a theory, and as you have said, the theory tries to explain a phenomena. Yeah. And coming up with the basic description of the terminology that are used in this particular theory, where we have conservation and we have resources. To conserve basically means to obtain, to retain, to protect a given resource. And resources are what we have now and again. So we talk about environmental conservation, then we think about conserving the components of the environment. Conservation of life, we think about probably retaining or maintaining the life that we have in some good way. So basically, maybe broadly you can say that conservation of resources theory entails the preservation or retention and protection of an individual's resource, which can take different aspects. If you are a businessman, then your resource are your customers, your monies. Yeah. If you are a student, then your resource are probably your time and stuff. If you are a teacher, then your resource are your academic materials, you have students, and so forth and so on. I think that gives a brief of what theory is all about.
Yeah, that is insightful, Daktari. And now, since we are educationists or educators, now you can maybe talk about how we apply the conservation of resources theory in the field of education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Don. Now, education. If we look at the main players of education, who are they? We have students and we have teachers.
Teachers, yeah.
Yeah. Now, I think because of the nature of the way things are running currently, we are looking at more of the student in an institution of learning. It's not, when you're doing your planning, you're not probably looking at how the teacher plans to teach, but how the students plan to learn. Yeah. That is actually the main focus. And in conservation of resource theory, we can start by asking ourselves, what resources does a student have? I'll say that in business, we talk about money, goods, building, cars, and stuff. A student's resource can actually be looked at in terms of time, in terms of effort, and also in terms of energy. And now, these are very important resource in a school environment, because a student does not have money. You don't expect students to produce money in a school institution. The question is, as a teacher, how do we assist this learner to preserve or to conserve their time? Because based on this conservation of resource theory, an individual will tend to obtain, to retain and protect these resources that they have. how do we help students to protect the resource of time? How do we help students to protect their resource of effort? And how do we help students to protect their resource of energy? Because students have lots of energy, they have lots of time, and they also have lots of effort. But all this, if not well captured, more so in the adolescence period, which is basically where students learn at, then it may end up to waste. So, as a teacher, probably knowledge of conservation of resource theory should allow you to be able to come up with ways of engaging learners in experiences that utilize their time efficiently, that engage their effort. You also can provide a supportive environment to this learner. And finally, because the education background is all an avenue of growth and development, you can provide opportunities where these learners can grow, and they can also actually have an opportunity to develop whatever they have, because we know that at the end of the day, you are getting students who have potential, and it is your task as a teacher to ensure that this potential is well utilized. I think that's something to do with some of this resource and how it can be invested wisely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Daktari, for that. You've talked about the resource investment, and now maybe you can move and talk about the loss and gain.
Yeah. Now, when you have a resource and you are conserving against what? You are conserving against a loss, isn't it?
Okay.
That means that if you don't conserve something, then you basically lose it.
Yeah, that's
now,
true.
A student is not a business person. What are some of the resources that a student is likely to lose? Number one, we have grades. Grades are very important in a school environment, and they are what basically brings students to that particular establishment. So how do you help a student to avoid the loss of grades? We have the social rejection. The school is a social environment. That's very important for us to note. So when you have the school as a social environment, then you should help the student to know how to interact in this social environment. And I think we all agree that in an environment where we have a lot of bullying, a lot of what we call monolization, when you remember Form 1's those particular days, is an environment which does not allow some good learning. We also have personal setbacks because students have individual differences. So as an educator, you can first of all create awareness about these challenges. Once you have awareness, you can come up with ways of supporting the students. And this could be done through encouragement, through coming up with resources that actually help them to cope with some of these problems, and also building resilience programs. By this I mean coming up with programs that help students develop perseverance, because the truth of the matter is you cannot prevent students from being bullied, but you can help them to develop what we call shock absorbers, so that when they experience these situations, they could have mechanisms for reporting and probably coming out more productive out of those engagements.
That's very insightful. And now we can move to from loss and gain. Now we can move to the preservation, how we can engage students in resource preservation so that they don't lose, they can be able to conserve their resources.
I think when we talk about preservation, something that comes to my mind, we've talked about the resource of time. Time is a resource. How do you preserve time? You know, the saying goes that you cannot create time. Once time passes, you cannot recreate it again, isn't it? So the only way you can conserve time is to use it efficiently. Or you can talk about, I don't know if it's a term which is normally used in the religious circle, redeeming time. You can redeem time. That is probably praying for wisdom, so that the time that you have is used effectively instead of wasting whatever you have. One way that you can redeem time is by developing good study habits. And I think we know that one of the most important aspects of knowledge is that when you have a tree and you want to cut a tree, you will spend some time sharpening the axe, isn't it? And that's one way we can look at time management. So instead of getting students out there to go and study haphazardly. First of all, equip them with time management skills.
Yeah.
Equip them with study skills so that when these students goes to a class, they can be able to actually do their work in a more efficient way, take less time to study. And that's very important. And also open up avenues for what we call assistant seeking. And also in other circles it's called scaffolding. Make sure that your doors are always open for the student, because a student may have a problem, but if the teacher is not approachable, they'll spend the whole year trying to find out the way forward. But as an educator, if you become social and allow the students to be able to come and see you, then it allows them to solve their problems faster. So I think that could be a very good aspect of resource preservation. So access to support, that's a very important aspect, and also creating a supportive learning environment where you encourage them to not only seek assistance from the teacher, also seek assistance from each other, and also teach them how to seek assistance in online platform, because the online platform has become a very important feature in terms of getting resources.
Okay, having talked about time, and maybe now we can talk about how to, after talking about the preservation of the resources and how we can technically preserve the resources, now maybe you can talk about how the students can be able to enrich the resources. So that I don't know what is the enrichment, but I believe that you are going to expound on the enrichment part, so that we know what exactly resource enrichment is all about. Yes.
Yeah. Now, thank you very much. Those are very good terminologies that we are coming up with and probably talking about.
Yes.
And looking at it from a layman perspective, when you're making something rich, means that you're making it better.
Yeah, that's true.
So these guys have been taught how to practice their trade, how to spend their time, how to utilize their resources, but how can it be done better? That's what we are saying. And by this we are just telling ourselves that there is no limit to the improvement of resources. We cannot, like the environment, we cannot say that now we have enough trees. We always have space for more trees. And that goes for knowledge. We always have more space for more knowledge, because knowledge is very dynamic. And for that reason, we are saying that each and every day brings an opportunity to come up with something new. So as a teacher, we should not assume that we are the custodians of knowledge. We should help students note that knowledge can be obtained from different platforms. You can have knowledge coming on from fellow students, you can have knowledge coming from online, and you can also have knowledge being obtained from colleagues who are not necessarily teaching that particular class. But now the question is, how do you authenticate this knowledge? And that is part of enrichment. Knowledge is not just knowledge, but knowledge should be authenticated, and this could be done through research, through corroboration, to ensure that whatever you obtain is not final, but basically can be justified through research and stuff like that. And I think that forms a good part of enrichment.
So that's informative, and maybe now you can talk about, after enriching these resources, now how to deal with to cope with the stress part in terms or during the whole process of trying to preserve and enrich these resources.
Yes. Now, any activity that you carry out, whether it is education, business, sports, there's always stress.
Of course.
Stress is part of life. But just because stress is there doesn't mean that we have to probably allow it to proceed, because the presence of stress basically means the absence of performance. When you have so much stress, then you don't expect performance to be as it is required. In an educational setting, we've talked about academic pressure being one of the sources of stress to students because of the need to perform. We've talked about social challenges being another source of stress, and this could be interaction issues. And we talked about personal difficulties, because we know that students are basically individual. When they come to the institution, they come as individuals. And that basically means that they also have personal challenges. So as a teacher, you should know how to deal not only with the social, but also the personal challenges. So as an educator, how do we help the learners to cope with stress? You can form what we call the social support system to deal with what we call the social problems. And by social support, you can teach learners, or you can engage them in activities of interaction. You can call experts to come and talk to these students on how they can be able to do or to interact with each other peacefully. You can also have what we call the academic support system. And by this I mean you can have what we call teacher-student interaction period, which we call the informal interaction hours, where you allow them to speak with these teachers in a more relaxed environment, and they can be able to learn from each other in terms of the problems and stuff like that. And you can also have what we call maybe educational videos, and also experts coming in talking about different personal issues, so that students may know if they have personal problems where they can refer probably. And also maybe I talk about providing the student with sites and books where they can make referrals. That's quite important.
Wow. And Daktari, finally, in the application of the conservation of resources, now you can maybe talk about this thing that we say equity and access, having access to these resources. How do you ensure that there is equity in terms of accessing these resources?
Equity is very important. Because lack of equity basically provides one of the challenges. And I will say that when resources are not equally distributed, or if there's a perception that the available resource is not equally distributed, or there is no equal access among the students, then it results to part of the stress. So as a teacher, I mean in a class environment, one thing I've said is that the students have varied capabilities. And for that reason, you may find a situation where you cannot cover for all students. So how do you ensure that your ability to teach a class is actually accessible to all the students? That's what we talk about equity in terms of access of resources. Your time. How do you ensure that you are able to divide your time amongst all the students in a given classroom environment? That's very, very important. How do you ensure that the available books, facilities, computers are available or can reach each and every individual in a class? All this is very important, and as a teacher you should come up with plans, because you know that sometimes it is beyond the teacher's scope to provide resources. They don't buy things for the school. It's quite expensive, they cannot manage. So come up with programs of how students can share, so that they are able to, you know, when you access something and you use it, then you will feel the value. You feel like you've obtained it, and that means that you want to preserve or to conserve it, because you have the ownership. So come with plans to share the little that is there. That's very important.
Wow. Yes, and guys, now thank you, Daktari. You've talked about the application of these resources in terms of in the education sector, and majorly we have talked about how to applied this conservation of resources theory in the mostly using the setting of a learner. Now, maybe you can talk briefly about the educators. We know that there are many stakeholders in the education system, and maybe you can briefly, as we finish, talk about how this applies to the educators and maybe teachers. And then we can finish.
Yes, thank you. Actually, it's good you brought that, because we've looked at more of the learner experience, the student. We also need to note, as a teacher, how do we conserve resources? And what are some of the teacher-based resources? So, as a teacher, you have to expend your time with the students as a resource. You have to use your energy. You have to use your emotional resource, and also you have to offer your professional services. And one way that you can have students receiving or being receptors of these resources, and valuing them, conserving them, is when they own them. So how do you make students own your time? How do you make them own your energy? How do you make them own your professional services? Basically, what we're saying is that if a student feels like they can value the time that you're spending with them, then they'll also value the content that you're trying to deliver within that period of time. If they feel that you are giving a positive vibe in terms of the emotional interaction, then they also want to value whatever it is that you are bringing in that emotional space. So as a teacher, it's very, very important that whatever you deliver to students is delivered with a lot of decorum, with a lot of love, with a lot of patience, and with a lot of care to ensure that the student associate the delivery to the content. Because in most times the content is new, but what they're receiving from you, probably they can receive anywhere. But now the only thing is that you are a teacher and you want to ensure that you are giving it in a very positive manner. It's just like you. If you ask for something, and I give you with a lot of disdain, a lot of hate, and a lot of probably maybe unkindness, then you not even love whatever I'm giving. If I give you a sweet and I give you with a lot of instruction, probably maybe I'm sad, I'm hungry, there's a lot of anger, a lot of negative emotions, then you will not think good of that particular food or even sweet, isn't it? You may not even take that food because probably the attached emotions are not very good. So as a teacher, you may not maybe have so much to give in terms of resources, money, present, gift, but the content you're giving to students will motivate them when it is given with the right attitude. The term is attitude. The attitude of a teacher should be positive because it is normally what is attached to the content that is being delivered. So the environment of a classroom is very challenging, but I'm sure that when we are able to know more about this theory of the conservation of resources, then we also get to have knowledge that students will want to conserve what they value. And the teacher is normally the first value creator to the student, so that if the content is attached to a positive attitude and value, then the learner will embrace that content and they will value it. And when they value it, they'll want to work on it, both for their own interest and also for the interest of the whole system. I think that should be something.
Thank you so much. And my take home is that in order for a student to gain value, the teacher also must the teacher must offer value, so that the students can be able to see value in what the teacher is giving. Thank you so much for that. That has been the conservation of resources theory. And this doesn't only apply in the education system, it applies in real life as such that for us to gain value from something, we always have to find value in the place that we are getting the resources that we are using. So we all want to conserve our resources and even make them better, preserve them or enrich those resources so that they can benefit us now and in the future. So thank you so much. Maybe Dr. if you have a take home or a piece of burning advice that you would want to give.
The issue with teachers, they don't have something to wind up. The only thing, I think what maybe you can bring out is that the attached value to any commodity is what makes the commodity valuable.
The attached value.
To any commodity. So, for example, you know, if you look at the current society, there are things which are not good, but there is a lot of perceived value in those things.
That's true.
So that makes them very valuable, isn't it? So somebody, you know, even food of value, somebody can give you a very good vegetable, maybe balanced diet, but probably there is no much value in terms of how it is being presented. But junk food, there is a lot of value, the environment, and with that you feel like you have to take this junk. So we're just saying, why can't we convert that value and now put it where it is supposed
It's
to be.
supposed to be.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kushinda.
No, if you're selling mrenda, put the value in that mrenda.
Yeah, that's true.
Present it like a person who's presenting pizza.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you. That has been our time for today, and continue watching Unchained Theories. We are highlighting the theories that make our lives matter, and our day-to-day lives are always run on this theory. So make sure that you subscribe, and we keep learning. There is more to come.
Thank you.